In the vast cosmos of Dragon Ball's universe, few characters embody transformation as profoundly as Prince Vegeta. Born into Saiyan royalty, yet forged through countless trials of defeat and redemption, his journey spans from ruthless conqueror to devoted protector. This is the complete chronicle of Vegeta's evolution, a tale that transcends simple heroism to explore the depths of pride, love, and ultimate growth. Through battles that shook worlds and quiet moments of introspection, we witness how a prince of destruction became a guardian of hope. Let us trace this remarkable path through space and time, following the Saiyan prince's extraordinary metamorphosis. In the year age 732, during an era when the Saiyan race lived under the iron fist of the galactic tyrant Frieza, a child was born who would one day reshape the very foundations of power across the universe. Prince Vegeta, fourth of his name, emerged into a world already marked by subjugation and fear. His father, King Vegeta, ruled the Saiyan people in name only, for true authority rested with the cold-blooded emperor, who viewed their entire race as nothing more than useful tools for conquest. The planet Vegeta itself bore witness to this grim reality, its crimson skies and harsh landscapes reflecting the brutal nature of its inhabitants. Yet, even among a warrior race renowned for their ferocity, the young prince displayed exceptional promise. His power level at birth far exceeded that of most adult Saiyans, marking him as a prodigy whose potential seemed limitless. King Vegeta gazed upon his son with a mixture of pride and trepidation, recognizing that this child might one day possess the strength to challenge even Frieza himself. However, the harsh realities of their situation soon became apparent. Frieza, ever vigilant against potential threats to his dominion, demanded that the young prince be surrendered to his care. The emperor understood well the dangers of allowing a Saiyan of such extraordinary potential to remain beyond his direct influence. Through means both subtle and overt, he ensured that Vegeta would be raised within his empire, shaped according to his will rather than his father's. The psychological impact of this separation would prove profound and lasting. Stripped from his birthright and thrust into an environment where strength determined survival, the young Vegeta learned to armor his heart with pride and arrogance. These traits, which would later define so much of his character, served as shields against the trauma of his circumstances. He could not afford to appear weak or vulnerable in Frieza's court, where any sign of inadequacy might result in death. During his formative years, Vegeta witnessed scenes that would haunt him for decades to come. On one particularly significant occasion, he observed his father's humiliation at the hands of Beerus, the god of destruction. The sight of King Vegeta, the supposed ruler of all Saiyans, cowering before an even greater power, left an indelible mark on the young prince's psyche. When Vegeta attempted to defend his father, Beerus casually paralyzed him with but a gesture, demonstrating the vast gulf that existed between their respective levels of power. This encounter served as a crucial lesson in the nature of strength and hierarchy. Vegeta learned that no matter how powerful one became, there would always exist beings of even greater might. Rather than discouraging him, this revelation only intensified his determination to grow stronger. He began to view power not merely as a means to an end, but as the ultimate measure of worth itself. Years passed in this manner, with Vegeta undergoing rigorous training while accompanying Frieza's forces on various missions throughout the galaxy. He fought alongside companions such as Nappa and Raditz, developing both his combat skills and his understanding of tactical warfare. Each battle served as another step in his education, teaching him the intricacies of conquest and the value of strategic thinking. Yet beneath the surface, resentment continued to build. Vegeta particularly despised Zarbon, Frieza's right-hand man, who took perverse pleasure in mocking the young Saiyan prince. These humiliations served to fuel the fire of his ambition, driving him to push himself ever harder in pursuit of the strength that might one day allow him to exact revenge upon those who had wronged him. The training regimens imposed upon him were brutal beyond measure, designed not merely to increase his power, but to forge him into a weapon of perfect efficiency. Frieza understood that a Saiyan's greatest strength lay not just in their natural combat abilities, but in their capacity for rapid growth through adversity. By constantly subjecting Vegeta to challenges that pushed him to his limits, the Emperor ensured that his unwilling protege would develop into a warrior of exceptional capability. As the years progressed, disturbing reports began to reach Frieza regarding the activities of the Saiyan resistance. King Vegeta, despite his earlier submission, had begun to harbor thoughts of rebellion. The king's growing discontent posed a potential threat to Frieza's carefully maintained control over the Saiyan race. Intelligence suggested that he might be planning some desperate attempt to overthrow his oppressor, possibly using his son as a rallying point for other dissatisfied Saiyans. The situation reached its breaking point when Frieza made a decision that would forever alter the course of galactic history. Recognizing that the Saiyans had become too numerous and too powerful to remain safely under his control, he chose to eliminate the perceived threat entirely. The legend of the Super Saiyan, a transformation that supposedly appeared once every 1,000 years, had begun to trouble his dreams. Rather than risk the possibility of such a being emerging to challenge him, Frieza decided that the Saiyan race itself must be destroyed. On that fateful day, while Prince Vegeta was away on a mission with Nappa and Raditz, Frieza enacted his genocidal plan. Planet Vegeta, along with virtually all of its inhabitants, was obliterated in a massive explosion that could be seen from neighboring star systems. The official explanation blamed a meteor strike, but those few Saiyans who survived knew the truth of what had transpired. When news of their homeworld's destruction reached Vegeta, his reaction surprised even his closest companions. Rather than expressing grief or rage, the young prince displayed an almost supernatural calm. He dismissed the loss with apparent indifference, claiming that he felt no attachment to the planet or concern for the fate of his people. This emotional detachment served as yet another layer of protection against the psychological trauma of losing everything he had ever known. In truth, the destruction of planet Vegeta represented far more than the mere loss of a world. It marked the end of Saiyan civilization, the extinction of a culture that had existed for countless generations. Vegeta found himself among the last surviving members of his race, a burden that would weigh heavily upon him in the years to come. The knowledge that he was now, in many ways, responsible for carrying on the legacy of his people added another dimension to his already complex motivations. The immediate aftermath of this tragedy saw Vegeta thrown more completely than ever into his role as one of Frieza's elite warriors. With no home to return to and no family left to protect, he threw himself into his duties with renewed intensity. Each mission became an opportunity to grow stronger, to prove his worth, and to slowly build toward the day when he might finally have the power to confront his tormentor. During this period, Vegeta's reputation as a formidable warrior began to spread throughout Frieza's empire. His tactical acumen, combined with his ever-increasing power level, made him an invaluable asset in the Emperor's campaigns of conquest. Worlds fell before his might, their defenders no match for the fury of the last Saiyan prince. Yet with each victory, the emptiness within him seemed to grow larger, a void that no amount of conquest could hope to fill. The psychological toll of his circumstances manifested in various ways throughout his adolescence and early adulthood. Vegeta developed an obsession with maintaining perfect control over his emotions, viewing any display of vulnerability as a potentially fatal weakness. He cultivated an image of cold, calculating efficiency, allowing no one to see past the mask he had constructed to protect his wounded psyche. This emotional isolation extended to his relationships with his fellow warriors. While he worked alongside Nappa and Raditz for many years, Vegeta never allowed himself to form genuine bonds of friendship or loyalty with them. Instead, he viewed them as useful tools, much as Frieza viewed him. This pattern of detachment would persist for decades, preventing him from experiencing the connections that might have provided some measure of healing for his traumatized soul. As reports began to filter in regarding a planet called Earth and its unusual defenders, Vegeta's interest was piqued by the mention of magical artifacts known as Dragon Balls. These mystical spheres supposedly possessed the power to grant any wish to those who gathered all seven, including the gift of immortality itself. For a warrior who had spent his entire life surrounded by beings of superior power, the prospect of eternal life represented the ultimate escape from the fear and vulnerability that had haunted him since childhood. The decision to pursue these Dragon Balls would prove to be the catalyst for everything that followed. As Vegeta prepared to depart for Earth, he could not have imagined that this journey would mark the beginning of his transformation from destroyer to protector, from isolated prince to devoted family man. The path ahead would be long and fraught with challenges that would test not only his strength, but the very foundations of his identity. Yet, even as he set course for this distant world, something deep within him stirred with anticipation. Perhaps it was the Saiyan instinct for battle, or perhaps some deeper recognition that his destiny lay among the stars rather than in service to a tyrant. Whatever the case, Prince Vegeta's journey toward Earth would prove to be far more than a simple quest for power. It would become the first step in a transformation that would ultimately redefine not only his own existence, but the fate of the universe itself. The year, age 762, marked a turning point that would echo through the cosmos for generations to come. As Prince Vegeta's spherical attack pod streaked through the void toward the small blue world called Earth, he carried with him not merely the hope of obtaining immortality, but the weight of an entire extinct civilization. The last prince of the Saiyans approached his destiny with the cold calculation that had become his trademark. Yet beneath that icy exterior burned ambitions that would soon be tested in ways he could never have anticipated. The journey to Earth provided ample time for contemplation, though Vegeta was not one given to introspection. Instead, he focused his thoughts on the tactical situation that awaited him. Intelligence gathered from Raditz's final transmission had painted a picture of a world populated by weaklings, defended by warriors whose power levels barely registered on conventional scouters. The notion that such feeble beings possessed artifacts capable of granting any wish seemed almost laughable, yet the evidence was undeniable. 7 magical spheres known as Dragon Balls lay scattered across this primitive planet, waiting for one with sufficient strength and cunning to claim them. Accompanying Vegeta on this mission was Nappa, a massive Saiyan warrior whose loyalty was matched only by his brutality. The bald giant had served the royal family for decades, first under King Vegeta and now under his heir. While Nappa possessed tremendous physical strength, he lacked the tactical brilliance and ruthless intelligence that made Vegeta such a formidable opponent. This dynamic suited the prince perfectly, as it ensured his continued dominance in their partnership, while providing him with a useful tool for the battles ahead. As their pods entered Earth's atmosphere, Vegeta's anticipation grew. The power levels he detected from the planet's surface confirmed his initial assessment. These humans and their alien allies possessed strength that might have been impressive by the standards of their world, but they were nothing compared to elite Saiyan warriors who had been forged in the fires of galactic conquest. The prince allowed himself a cold smile as he contemplated the ease with which he would sweep aside these defenders and claim his prize. The impact of their landing pods created massive craters in the Earth's surface, sending shockwaves that could be felt for miles in every direction. As the dust settled and the spherical vessels opened, Vegeta emerged with the fluid grace of a predator, his white and blue armor gleaming in the alien sunlight. Every movement spoke of controlled power and absolute confidence, the bearing of one who had never known defeat in personal combat. Nappa's emergence was far less subtle, his massive frame accompanied by boisterous laughter as he surveyed their new surroundings. The contrast between the two Saiyans was striking. Where Vegeta embodied cold calculation, Nappa represented raw, unbridled violence. Both approaches had their place in warfare, and Vegeta had long since learned to utilize his companion's strengths while compensating for his obvious weaknesses. Their first demonstration of power came through the cultivation of Saibamen, plant-based warriors grown from seeds that had been carefully preserved during their journey. These creatures, while individually weaker than either Saiyan, served multiple purposes. They would test the capabilities of Earth's defenders while conserving the energy of their masters for more significant challenges. Moreover, they would instill fear and despair in their opponents, psychological weapons that could prove just as valuable as physical force. The Earth's defenders had gathered to meet this threat, a motley collection of humans and aliens whose determination far exceeded their actual power. Vegeta observed them with the detached interest of a scientist studying laboratory specimens. Each fighter represented a different approach to martial arts and energy manipulation, yet all shared the same fundamental weakness. They lacked the ruthless killer instinct that marked true warriors. As the battle commenced, Vegeta positioned himself as an observer rather than a participant, allowing Nappa and the Saibamen to handle the initial combat. This strategy served multiple purposes. It provided valuable intelligence about his opponent's capabilities and fighting styles, while preserving his own energy for the more challenging battles he knew must come. Additionally, it demonstrated his supreme confidence in his own abilities, showing these defenders that he considered them so weak that his personal involvement was unnecessary. The systematic destruction of Earth's defenders unfolded with brutal efficiency. Yamcha fell first, his death serving as a stark reminder of the vast gulf that separated Earth's warriors from their Saiyan opponents. The remaining fighters rallied with admirable courage, but courage alone could not bridge the gap in power that divided them from their enemies. One by one, they fell before the overwhelming might of Nappa, each defeat driving home the hopelessness of their situation. Vegeta watched these proceedings with growing satisfaction, occasionally offering tactical advice or criticism to his subordinate. When Nappa hesitated or made tactical errors, the prince's voice cut through the chaos with sharp corrections. This was not merely combat, but education. Vegeta was teaching these defenders the fundamental truth that had governed his entire existence: that power was the only currency that mattered in the universe, and they were utterly bankrupt. The arrival of Piccolo, Krillin, and Gohan represented a slight escalation in the challenge, but not enough to concern the Saiyan prince. He noted their improved coordination and the presence of what appeared to be a half-breed Saiyan among their number, though this last observation intrigued him more than it worried him. How such a being had come to exist on this backwater world was a mystery that might prove worth investigating, assuming any of them survived the coming battle. As the conflict intensified, Vegeta began to discern patterns in his opponent's fighting styles and energy signatures. The Namekian, called Piccolo, showed surprising resilience and tactical awareness, while the small human demonstrated techniques that belied his diminutive stature. Most interesting of all was the young half-breed, whose power seemed to fluctuate dramatically based on his emotional state. This last characteristic marked him as possessing genuine Saiyan heritage, though how diluted that bloodline might be remained to be seen. The tide of battle shifted dramatically with the arrival of additional defenders, including warriors whose power levels registered slightly higher on Vegeta's scouter. Yet, Even these reinforcements could not fundamentally alter the equation. Earth's champions fought with valor and determination, but they remained hopelessly outclassed by opponents who had been forged in conflicts spanning multiple star systems. When Nappa's patience finally wore thin and he began to engage more seriously, the true scope of the power disparity became apparent. The massive Saiyan moved through Earth's defenders like a force of nature, his attacks devastating not only his immediate targets but the surrounding landscape as well. Vegeta observed this carnage with professional appreciation, noting both his subordinates' strengths and the tactical errors that a more skilled opponent might exploit. The emotional responses of Earth's defenders provided additional insight into their psychological makeup. Unlike Saiyan warriors, who were taught from childhood to suppress such feelings in combat, these beings allowed their emotions to influence their tactical decisions, while this occasionally led to brief surges in power. It more often resulted in reckless actions that played directly into their enemy's hands. As reports filtered in regarding the approach of another defender, Vegeta's interest was piqued by references to someone called Goku. The power level readings suggested that this individual might actually pose a meaningful challenge, though the prince remained confident in his ultimate superiority. After all, he had spent years training under conditions that would have destroyed lesser beings, pushed to his limits by the demands of serving in Frieza's forces. The psychological impact of watching his companions fall one by one clearly affected the remaining defenders, yet they continued to fight with a determination that Vegeta found both admirable and foolish. These beings possessed something that the prince had long since abandoned: hope. They genuinely believed that victory remained possible despite all evidence to the contrary. Such naivety would have been laughable if not for the way it drove them to continue fighting against impossible odds. When Goku finally arrived on the battlefield, Vegeta's scouter immediately registered power levels that gave him pause. This low-class warrior, this son of Bardock, somehow possessed strength that approached his own. The revelation was both intriguing and disturbing, challenging fundamental assumptions about Saiyan hierarchy and breeding that had shaped Vegeta's worldview since childhood. The ensuing battle between Goku and Nappa provided the prince with his first real glimpse of the opposition he would soon face. As the conflict progressed, it became increasingly clear that the massive Saiyan was outmatched by this newcomer's speed and technique. More troubling still, Goku displayed tactical awareness and fighting instincts that seemed to improve moment by moment, as if he were learning and adapting even during combat. Vegeta's decision to eliminate Nappa for his failure served multiple purposes beyond simple punishment for incompetence. It demonstrated to the remaining defenders the ruthless hierarchy that governed Saiyan society, while also removing a liability that might have complicated the coming battle. The shocked reactions of Earth's champions revealed much about their naive understanding of warrior culture and the harsh realities of survival in the broader universe. The subsequent confrontation between Vegeta and Goku represented far more than a simple test of strength. It was a clash between two fundamentally different philosophies of power and purpose. Where Vegeta had been shaped by loss, trauma, and the desperate need to survive in a hostile universe, Goku embodied a more innocent approach to martial arts and personal growth. This difference in perspective would prove crucial as their battle unfolded. As they exchanged the first tentative blows, Vegeta found himself genuinely impressed by his opponent's capabilities. Goku's technique was unrefined compared to the prince's formal training, yet it possessed an adaptability and creativity that made him genuinely unpredictable. More disturbing still, the low-class warrior seemed to be growing stronger as the fight progressed, pushing himself to new levels of power through sheer determination. The revelation of Goku's Kaioken technique represented a turning point in Vegeta's understanding of his opponent's capabilities. This ability to multiply his base power through what appeared to be pure willpower challenged everything the prince thought he knew about the limits of Saiyan potential. When Goku pushed the technique to 4 times its normal multiplier, Vegeta found himself in the unprecedented position of being genuinely outmatched by a fellow Saiyan. The decision to transform into a great ape represented both a tactical necessity and a psychological retreat. Vegeta had always prided himself on his natural fighting ability and tactical superiority, relying on raw power only when absolutely necessary. The fact that he was forced to resort to his most primitive transformation against a low-class warrior struck at the very foundations of his self-image and understanding of Saiyan hierarchy. The great ape form brought with it a massive increase in physical power, but at the cost of the refined technique and tactical awareness that made Vegeta such a formidable opponent. In this state, he became more beast than warrior, driven by instinct rather than intelligence. While this transformation allowed him to dominate the immediate battlefield, it also revealed the desperation that lay beneath his controlled exterior. The combined efforts of Earth's remaining defenders to neutralize his transformation represented a level of coordination and sacrifice that Vegeta had rarely encountered. These beings willingly put themselves in mortal danger, not for personal gain or glory, but to protect their world and each other. Such motivations were alien to the prince's experience, yet he could not deny their effectiveness in achieving tactical objectives. When Yajirobe succeeded in severing his tail where Earth's strongest warriors had failed, Vegeta experienced something he had not felt since childhood: genuine vulnerability. The sudden loss of his transformation left him weakened and disoriented, while his opponents rallied for what they clearly hoped would be a final assault. For the first time in decades, the prince found himself in a position where defeat seemed not only possible, but probable. The ensuing battle tested every aspect of Vegeta's training and experience. Deprived of his overwhelming physical advantages, he was forced to rely on technique, cunning, and sheer force of will to maintain his position. The attacks came from multiple directions as Earth's defenders pressed their temporary advantage, each strike driven by the desperate hope that they might somehow emerge victorious against impossible odds. Gohan's unexpected transformation into a great ape represented an ironic reversal of fortune that was not lost on the Saiyan prince. The same power that had nearly guaranteed his victory was now turned against him, wielded by a half-breed who lacked the training to control such immense strength. The young warrior's rampage posed a threat not only to Vegeta himself, but to everyone present friend and foe alike. Yet, even in this desperate situation, Vegeta's tactical mind continued to function. He recognized that the boy's lack of control could be exploited, that his overwhelming power came at the cost of precision and awareness. By carefully timing his attacks and remaining mobile despite his injuries, the prince managed to sever Gohan's tail and neutralize the immediate threat. The final collapse of the great ape Gohan directly onto Vegeta's position represented a stroke of fortune that even the prince's tactical brilliance could not have anticipated. The massive weight and momentum of the falling half-breed inflicted damage that no conventional attack could have achieved, leaving Vegeta battered and barely conscious as his transformation ended. Crawling toward his escape pod through sheer force of will, Vegeta experienced emotions he had thought long buried. The taste of defeat was bitter beyond description, made worse by the knowledge that he had been bested not by superior technique or greater power, but by the collective efforts of beings he had dismissed as weaklings. The lesson was both humbling and infuriating, challenging everything he believed about strength and superiority. The mercy shown by Krillin at Goku's telepathic request added another layer of complexity to Vegeta's defeat. These warriors possessed the power to end his life, yet they chose instead to spare him based on some incomprehensible philosophy of redemption and second chances. Such behavior was so foreign to his experience that he could barely process it, much less understand the motivations behind it. As his space pod carried him away from Earth's surface, Vegeta found himself changed in ways he did not yet fully comprehend. The absolute confidence that had sustained him through decades of service to Frieza had been shattered, replaced by a burning need to understand how he had been defeated by supposedly inferior opponents. More troubling still, he could not shake the memory of the mercy he had been shown, a kindness so unexpected that it challenged his fundamental understanding of warrior culture. The journey back to one of Frieza's medical facilities provided time for contemplation and planning. Vegeta's body would heal from his physical injuries, but the wounds to his pride and self-image would prove far more persistent. He had encountered something on Earth that defied all his previous experience. Warriors who fought not for conquest or personal glory, but for the protection of others and the defense of their home. This revelation carried implications that extended far beyond his personal defeat. If low-class warriors could achieve such heights through training and determination alone, what did that say about the rigid hierarchies that governed Saiyan society? More importantly, what did it suggest about his own potential for growth and development? These questions would haunt him in the days to come, driving him toward choices that would ultimately reshape not only his own destiny, but the fate of the universe itself. The prince's vow to return and claim victory represented more than simple revenge or wounded pride. It marked the beginning of an obsession that would consume him for years to come, driving him to push beyond every limit he had previously accepted. Goku had shown him that power could be achieved through means other than breeding and circumstances of birth. This lesson, painful though it was, would prove to be the catalyst for transformations that Vegeta could not yet imagine. As his pod disappeared into the void between worlds. Prince Vegeta carried with him more than just physical injuries and bruised pride. He bore the seeds of change that would eventually blossom into something far greater than the entitled royal who had first set foot on Earth's soil. The warrior who would emerge from this defeat would be harder, stronger, and more determined than ever before, driven by motivations that transcended simple conquest or revenge. The period following Vegeta's humiliating defeat on Earth marked a profound transformation in the Saiyan prince's approach to power and purpose. As his recovery pod hurtled through the cosmos toward one of Frieza's medical facilities, the physical wounds inflicted by Earth's defenders began to heal with the remarkable resilience that characterized his warrior race. Yet the deeper injuries to his pride and worldview would prove far more persistent, driving him toward obsessions that would reshape not only his own destiny, but the fundamental nature of what it meant to be a Saiyan. Upon reaching the medical station, Vegeta submitted to the healing process with uncharacteristic patience. The regeneration tanks that restored his battered body also provided time for contemplation, something the prince had rarely indulged in throughout his years of service to Frieza. Suspended in the healing fluid, his mind turned repeatedly to the impossible reality of his defeat. A low-class warrior named Goku had not only matched his power, but had demonstrated techniques and growth potential that challenged every assumption about Saiyan hierarchy and genetic destiny. The legend of the Super Saiyan, which had haunted Frieza's dreams and motivated the destruction of planet Vegeta, now took on new significance in Vegeta's thoughts. If such a transformation were truly possible, if there existed levels of power beyond anything he had previously imagined, then his defeat on Earth represented not an ending but a beginning. The prince began to construct a new understanding of his purpose, one that extended beyond simple service to a galactic tyrant and into realms of personal achievement that he had never dared to contemplate. News of the Namekian Dragon Balls reached Vegeta during his recovery, providing him with a new objective that transcended his previous desires for revenge against Earth's defenders. The prospect of obtaining immortality through these mystical artifacts offered a solution to the fundamental vulnerability that had led to his defeat. No longer would he need to fear beings of superior power if he possessed eternal life and the time to grow stronger without the threat of death, limiting his potential. The journey to Namek represented more than a simple quest for magical artifacts. It marked Vegeta's first independent action since childhood, a break from the patterns of obedience and service that had defined his existence under Frieza's rule. For the first time in decades, he was pursuing his own goals, according to his own timeline, accountable to no master save his own ambitions and desires for growth. The planet Namek itself proved to be a world of surprising beauty and tranquility. Its green skies and peaceful villages standing in stark contrast to the harsh landscapes of his destroyed homeworld. Yet this serenity was deceptive, for the planet had already become a battleground where multiple factions competed for the Dragon Balls that represented the key to ultimate power. Frieza himself had arrived with his elite forces, transforming what Vegeta had hoped would be a simple retrieval mission into a complex three-way conflict. The presence of Earthlings on Namek came as an unwelcome surprise, though one that provided valuable insight into the character and capabilities of his former opponents. Krillin and Gohan had somehow managed to traverse the vast distances between worlds, demonstrating a level of determination and resourcefulness that commanded grudging respect. Their presence also indicated that Goku might not be far behind, a prospect that filled Vegeta with conflicting emotions of anticipation and apprehension. Vegeta's initial encounters with Frieza's forces on Namek revealed both his growth since Earth and the continuing limitations of his power. The elimination of Kui, his former rival among Frieza's warriors, demonstrated that his defeat had motivated significant improvement in his abilities. Yet, the battle with Zarbon that followed served as a harsh reminder that vast gulfs still existed between his current strength and the levels of power commanded by Frieza's elite servants. The transformation of Zarbon from his elegant humanoid form into a reptilian monster provided Vegeta with his first glimpse of the shape-changing abilities that characterized many of the universe's most powerful beings. This revelation added another layer of complexity to his understanding of power dynamics, suggesting that strength could take forms far removed from the crude physical might that Saiyans traditionally valued. The brutal beating he received at Zarbon's transformed hands left him broken and near death, a reminder that his journey toward ultimate power had only just begun. The healing process that followed his defeat by Zarbon triggered the first of many Saiyan genetic advantages that would prove crucial to Vegeta's development. The near-death experience activated the biological mechanisms that allowed his race to grow stronger after recovering from severe injury, a trait that had made them valuable to Frieza despite their rebellious nature. This Zenkai boost not only restored his health, but elevated his power to levels that allowed him to exact swift and decisive revenge upon his tormentor. The psychological impact of killing Zarbon extended beyond simple satisfaction at revenge achieved for the first time since his defeat on Earth. Vegeta had demonstrated clear superiority over an opponent who had previously dominated him completely. This victory served to rebuild his confidence, while proving that the growth potential he had observed in Goku was not unique to low-class warriors. With proper motivation and adversity, even a Saiyan prince could transcend his previous limitations and achieve new heights of power. The complex dynamics that developed between Vegeta and the Earthlings on Namek revealed aspects of his character that had long remained hidden beneath layers of pride and conditioned ruthlessness. His temporary alliance with Krillin and Gohan represented a profound departure from his usual approach to potential opponents. While he justified this cooperation in purely tactical terms, claiming that their combined strength was necessary to oppose Frieza's forces, the reality was more nuanced than he cared to admit. Working alongside beings he had previously dismissed as weaklings forced Vegeta to acknowledge their individual strengths and capabilities. Gohan's hidden power, which manifested during moments of extreme emotion, reminded him constantly of the unpredictable nature of Saiyan genetics and the potential that lay dormant even in half-breed offspring. Krillin's tactical awareness and surprising resilience demonstrated that strength could manifest in forms other than raw physical power, a lesson that challenged his traditional understanding of warrior hierarchy. The arrival of the Ginyu Force on Namek marked an escalation in the conflict that tested every aspect of Vegeta's development since leaving Earth. These elite warriors, each possessing power levels that dwarfed anything he had previously encountered, represented the pinnacle of what could be achieved through training and genetic enhancement within Frieza's empire. Their flamboyant personalities and theatrical fighting styles initially struck him as ridiculous. Yet, their combat effectiveness quickly dispelled any notion that they were anything less than deadly serious opponents. The systematic defeat of Earth's defenders at the hands of the Ginyu Force served as a harsh reminder of the vast gulfs that still existed between different levels of cosmic power. Vegeta watched with growing desperation as warriors who had seemed so formidable during their previous encounters were casually overwhelmed by opponents whose abilities transcended conventional understanding. The reality that he himself was only marginally more capable than the falling Earthlings struck at his renewed confidence and forced him to confront his continued limitations. Goku's arrival on Namek brought with it revelations that challenged every assumption Vegeta had developed about Saiyan potential and the nature of power itself. The low-class warrior had somehow achieved strength levels that approached those of the Ginyu Force's elite members, demonstrating growth that seemed to transcend normal biological limitations. More troubling still, Goku displayed an ease and confidence in battle that suggested his power was still growing, that the levels he demonstrated represented merely a fraction of his true potential. The systematic defeat of the Ginyu Force at Goku's hands provided Vegeta with a masterclass in combat efficiency and tactical superiority. Each victory demonstrated principles that went beyond simple overwhelming power, showcasing techniques and strategies that maximized effectiveness while minimizing energy expenditure. The gap between Goku's abilities and his own became increasingly apparent, yet rather than discouraging him, these demonstrations served to illuminate the path toward greater strength. Vegeta's decision to eliminate the unconscious Ginyu Force members after Goku's victories revealed the fundamental differences in their approaches to warfare and honor. Where Goku saw defeated opponents who no longer posed a threat, Vegeta recognized dangerous enemies who might recover and seek revenge. This philosophical divide would persist throughout their relationship, reflecting their different upbringings and the lessons they had learned about survival in a hostile universe. The emergence of Captain Ginyu's body-switching abilities introduced Vegeta to concepts of identity and consciousness that transcended physical form. Watching Goku's body controlled by an alien consciousness, while the Saiyan warrior was trapped in his opponent's damaged form, challenged basic assumptions about the relationship between mind and matter. These events provided valuable insight into the diverse nature of abilities that existed beyond simple physical enhancement or energy manipulation. The final confrontation with Frieza himself represented the culmination of decades of fear, resentment, and suppressed rebellion. Standing before the being who had destroyed his world and enslaved his people, Vegeta experienced emotions that he had buried since childhood. The Emperor's casual dismissal of his strength, treating him as nothing more than an annoying insect, rekindled the helpless rage he had felt while watching his father's humiliation at the hands of greater powers. Frieza's transformations during their battle served as a stark education in the levels of power that existed at the apex of cosmic hierarchy. Each new form revealed abilities that dwarfed everything Vegeta had previously encountered, demonstrating that his understanding of strength had been pathetically limited. The Emperor's casual dominance over not only himself but the combined might of Earth's defenders drove home the reality that vast expanses of growth still lay ahead for anyone hoping to challenge the universe's true rulers. The emergence of Goku's Super Saiyan transformation provided both vindication and devastation for Vegeta's worldview. The legend that had motivated Frieza's genocide of their people proved to be real. Yet it had manifested in the most unlikely candidate imaginable. A low-class warrior with no royal blood or elite training had achieved the pinnacle of Saiyan evolution, while the prince, who should have inherited this power by birthright, remained trapped at lower levels of development. Vegeta's death at Frieza's hands represented more than the simple ending of a life. It marked the conclusion of one phase of his existence and the beginning of something entirely different. As his consciousness faded, the prince experienced emotions and thoughts that had been suppressed for decades. The tears that fell from his eyes were not merely products of physical pain, but expressions of a profound grief for everything he had lost and everything he had failed to become. The revelations he shared with Goku in his final moments represented perhaps the most honest conversation of his adult life, stripped of pride and pretense by approaching death. Vegeta spoke truths about Frieza's manipulation and the destruction of their people that he had never before acknowledged. His plea for Goku to avenge their race transcended simple revenge, becoming a request for validation of everything that Saiyans had been and everything they might yet become. The afterlife experience that followed his death provided Vegeta with perspectives on existence and morality that had been absent from his previous worldview. The judgment he faced forced him to confront the consequences of his actions and the reality of the pain he had inflicted throughout his years of service to Frieza. Yet even in death, his primary focus remained on the power he had failed to achieve and the transformations that remained beyond his reach. His eventual resurrection and return to the world of the living marked not merely a restoration of life, but an opportunity for complete reinvention. The universe he returned to had been fundamentally altered by Goku's victory over Frieza and the emergence of the Super Saiyan transformation. No longer could Vegeta simply pursue power for its own sake, or seek strength through service to greater masters. The path forward would require him to discover new sources of motivation and new definitions of what it meant to be strong. The knowledge that immortality had once again slipped from his grasp served as both disappointment and liberation. While eternal life might have solved certain problems related to his vulnerability and fear of death, it would not have addressed the deeper issues of purpose and identity that had driven him since childhood. The prince who emerged from this crucible of defeat and resurrection would need to find reasons for existence that transcended simple survival and the accumulation of power. The relationships he had formed during the Namek crisis, however temporary and tactically motivated, had planted seeds of understanding about cooperation and shared struggle that would eventually blossom into something greater. His brief alliance with Krillin and Gohan had demonstrated that working alongside others could achieve objectives that individual effort could not reach. While he was not yet ready to embrace such concepts fully, the foundation for future growth had been established. As Vegeta contemplated his next moves in the aftermath of the Namek crisis, he carried with him lessons that extended far beyond simple combat techniques or power enhancement methods. He had learned that strength could manifest in unexpected forms, that genetic heritage was not destiny, and that the universe contained mysteries and possibilities that his previous education had never encompassed. These insights would prove crucial as he embarked upon the next phase of his journey toward becoming something greater than he had ever imagined possible. The years following the Namek crisis marked a period of unprecedented uncertainty and introspection for Prince Vegeta. Stripped of his familiar role as one of Frieza's elite warriors and forced to confront the reality of his continued limitations, he found himself adrift in a universe that had been fundamentally altered by recent events. The emergence of the Super Saiyan transformation had shattered every assumption about Saiyan potential and hierarchy, while his own repeated defeats had exposed the hollow nature of the pride that had sustained him through decades of servitude and loss. The 3 years of preparation that followed Trunks' warning about the approaching android threat provided Vegeta with both purpose and torment. For the first time since childhood, he possessed a clear objective that transcended simple survival or service to others. The prospect of achieving the legendary Super Saiyan transformation consumed his thoughts and drove him to training regimens that pushed even his considerable endurance to its limits. Every waking moment became an opportunity to grow stronger, to bridge the gap that separated him from Goku's newfound power. Yet, this period of intense focus also brought unexpected complications in the form of his evolving relationship with Bulma Brief. The brilliant scientist who had played such a crucial role in the Dragon Ball searches represented everything that Vegeta had been taught to dismiss as weakness. She possessed no combat abilities, commanded no armies, and wielded no conventional forms of power. Despite these apparent limitations, she demonstrated a strength of will and independence of spirit that commanded his grudging respect, even as her presence in his life created psychological conflicts he was ill-equipped to process. The tension between his warrior nature and his growing feelings for Bulma manifested in numerous ways throughout this period. Vegeta found himself torn between the emotional detachment that had protected him since childhood and an unfamiliar desire for connection that threatened to undermine everything he thought he understood about himself. The walls he had constructed around his heart, forged through decades of trauma and conditioning, began to show cracks under the pressure of emotions he had never expected to experience. Bulma's fearless approach to their interactions consistently caught him off guard. Where others cowered before his intimidating presence or sought to manipulate him through appeals to his ego, she treated him with a mixture of exasperation and genuine care that was unlike anything in his previous experience. Her willingness to challenge his assumptions and call attention to his flaws created a dynamic that was both infuriating and strangely compelling, forcing him to see himself through eyes unclouded by fear or worship. The training itself became an outlet for frustrations that extended far beyond his pursuit of the Super Saiyan transformation. Each session in Capsule Corporation's gravity chamber represented not merely physical conditioning, but a form of meditation on the nature of power and identity. The crushing artificial gravity that would have destroyed lesser beings became his preferred environment, a place where the external pressure matched the internal forces that drove him toward constant improvement. As the months passed, Vegeta began to notice changes in his approach to training that reflected deeper shifts in his psychological makeup. Where once he had pursued power purely as a means of domination and revenge, he now found himself driven by more complex motivations. The desire to surpass Goku remained central to his efforts, yet it was increasingly accompanied by subtler goals related to self-discovery and personal validation that had nothing to do with external approval or recognition. The relationship with Bulma evolved gradually from mutual antagonism to grudging tolerance, and eventually to something that neither of them was quite prepared to acknowledge. Their interactions were marked by verbal sparring that masked deeper attractions, moments of unexpected vulnerability that were quickly covered by renewed hostility, and a growing sense of compatibility that defied all logical analysis. Vegeta found himself genuinely caring about her welfare, while simultaneously resenting the weakness that such feelings represented. The birth of Trunks marked a watershed moment in Vegeta's personal development, introducing him to emotions and responsibilities that he had never imagined experiencing. The sight of his infant son triggered protective instincts that had lain dormant since his own childhood, creating conflicts between his warrior nature and his emerging paternal feelings. The prince, who had been raised to value strength above all else, now found himself responsible for protecting someone whose very existence represented profound vulnerability. Yet, Vegeta's initial response to fatherhood reflected the psychological barriers that still governed much of his behavior. Unable to process the overwhelming emotions associated with having a family, he retreated into familiar patterns of emotional detachment and focus on training. His dismissal of Trunks as irrelevant to his greater purposes represented not genuine indifference, but a defensive mechanism designed to protect both himself and his son from the potential pain of attachment in a universe where loss was inevitable. The arrival of the androids brought with it the first tangible evidence that Vegeta's intensive training had achieved its primary objective. The moment of his transformation into a Super Saiyan represented the culmination of years of obsessive effort and the validation of his belief in his own exceptional potential. Standing before Android 19, with golden hair blazing and power radiating from every fiber of his being, he experienced a sense of triumph that seemed to justify every sacrifice and hardship he had endured. The systematic dismantling of Android 19 provided Vegeta with his first opportunity to demonstrate the fruits of his transformation. Each blow landed with devastating effect. Each energy blast tore through his opponent's defenses with contemptuous ease. The artificial being that had seemed so formidable moments before was revealed as nothing more than a collection of mechanical parts before the overwhelming might of a true Super Saiyan. This victory served not only as proof of his achievement, but as a statement to the universe that Prince Vegeta had reclaimed his rightful place among the elite. Yet, the emergence of androids 17 and 18 quickly demonstrated that his transformation, however significant, was merely another step on a much longer journey toward ultimate power. These new opponents possessed strength that dwarfed anything he had previously encountered, treating his Super Saiyan abilities with the same casual dismissal that he had shown to weaker foes. The humiliation of his defeat at Android 18's hands struck at the very core of his renewed confidence, forcing him to confront the reality that vast levels of power still lay beyond his reach. The discovery of his son's true identity as the time-traveling future Trunks added layers of complexity to Vegeta's understanding of family and responsibility. The young man who had saved Goku from the heart virus and warned them about the android threat carried within him the blood of the Saiyan royal line. Yet he had been raised in a timeline where Vegeta himself had died before they could form any meaningful relationship. This revelation forced the prince to consider the consequences of his emotional detachment and the legacy he was creating through his choices. The emergence of Cell as an even greater threat than the androids provided Vegeta with both opportunity and temptation that would test every aspect of his character development. The bio-android's systematic absorption of human beings to increase his power represented everything that the prince found abhorrent about shortcuts to strength. Yet, Cell's challenge to his pride proved irresistible. The prospect of facing an opponent who claimed to possess his own cells and fighting techniques created a personal investment in the conflict that transcended simple heroic duty. The intensive training in the hyperbolic time chamber with future Trunks marked another crucial phase in Vegeta's evolution as both warrior and father. Spending a full year in the compressed time of the mystical chamber forced him to confront not only his physical limitations, but the complex dynamics of his relationship with his son. The young man's dedication to protecting his timeline and his respectful yet independent attitude challenged Vegeta's assumptions about authority and familial obligation. Within the chamber's harsh environment, Vegeta achieved new levels of Super Saiyan power that seemed to place him among the universe's elite fighters. The ascended form he developed through months of relentless training granted him strength that surpassed even Cell's semi-perfect state, creating a sense of invincibility that would prove to be both asset and liability in the battles to come. The confidence that accompanied this new power rekindled his belief in his own superiority and his destiny to stand above all other warriors. The decision to allow Cell to achieve his perfect form represented perhaps the most controversial choice of Vegeta's career as a reformed warrior. His reasoning was sound from a purely combat perspective, as the prospect of facing an opponent at their maximum strength appealed to his warrior's instincts and desire for a definitive test of his abilities. Yet this choice also reflected the persistent pride and arrogance that continued to influence his decision-making despite his apparent growth as a person. The confrontation with Perfect Cell that followed demonstrated both the heights Vegeta had achieved and the limitations that still constrained his development. His Final Flash technique proved capable of devastating even Cell's perfect form, removing a significant portion of the bio-android's body and proving that his power had reached truly cosmic levels. Yet, Cell's regeneration and subsequent dominance revealed that raw strength alone was insufficient to guarantee victory against opponents who possessed supernatural abilities and infinite endurance. The intervention of future Trunks during his battle with Cell created a moment of profound personal significance that transcended the immediate tactical situation. Watching his son willingly oppose him to prevent a potentially catastrophic mistake forced Vegeta to confront the reality that his choices affected more than just himself. The blood drawn by Trunks' blast served as both a physical wound and a symbolic representation of the barriers that his pride had created between himself and those who cared about him. The Cell games that followed provided Vegeta with ample opportunity to observe and analyze the fighting styles and philosophies of Earth's defenders. Goku's approach to the tournament, treating it as a learning experience and growth opportunity rather than simply a contest to be won, represented a fundamentally different perspective on combat and competition. The decision to forfeit his battle with Cell in favor of giving Gohan the chance to fight reflected confidence and wisdom that Vegeta was not yet prepared to embrace. The emergence of Gohan's hidden power during the Cell games forced Vegeta to confront uncomfortable truths about potential and achievement that challenged his fundamental understanding of Saiyan superiority. The young half-breed's transformation into Super Saiyan 2 represented a level of power that dwarfed everything Vegeta had achieved through years of intensive training and sacrifice. The ease with which Gohan dominated Perfect Cell served as both inspiration and humiliation, demonstrating that genetic heritage and royal bloodline were no guarantee of supremacy. Vegeta's attack on Super Perfect Cell, following the apparent death of future Trunks, marked a turning point in his emotional development that would have consequences extending far beyond the immediate battle. The sight of his son's lifeless body triggered protective instincts and grief that overwhelmed his usual tactical caution, driving him to assault an opponent he knew to be vastly superior in power. This moment of pure emotional response represented a crack in the armor of detachment he had maintained since childhood. The futility of his assault on Cell, combined with the injury he sustained while trying to protect Gohan, served as a harsh reminder of his continued limitations and the consequences of allowing emotion to override tactical judgment. Yet the apology he offered to Gohan for his interference represented perhaps the first genuine expression of regret and responsibility he had shown since his resurrection. This acknowledgement of fault marked a crucial step in his ongoing development as someone capable of considering the welfare of others. The final victory over Cell, achieved through the combined efforts of Gohan's determination and his own strategic distraction, provided Vegeta with a new understanding of teamwork and shared accomplishment. While he could not claim credit for the ultimate triumph, his contribution to the victory demonstrated that cooperation could achieve objectives that individual effort could not reach. This lesson would prove crucial as he continued to evolve from a solitary warrior into someone capable of fighting alongside others for common goals. The aftermath of the Cell games brought with it a period of reflection and reorganization that would set the stage for the next phase of Vegeta's development. The death of Goku removed both his primary rival and the standard against which he measured his own progress, forcing him to find new sources of motivation and new definitions of what it meant to be strong. The vow to abandon fighting that he made in the wake of these events represented not genuine pacifism, but an attempt to process grief and guilt that he was unprepared to handle through normal emotional channels. The commitment to becoming a better husband and father reflected his growing recognition that strength could manifest in forms other than combat prowess. The responsibilities associated with family life required different skills and perspectives than those he had developed as a warrior, challenging him to grow in directions that his previous education had never encompassed. The domestic tranquility he experienced during this period provided a glimpse of possibilities that extended beyond the endless cycle of training and conflict that had defined his existence. Yet, even as he embraced these new roles and responsibilities, the fundamental aspects of his nature remained unchanged. The pride that had driven him to greatness continued to influence his decisions and relationships, while the competitive instincts that made him such a formidable warrior remained dormant rather than extinguished. The peace he experienced was real and meaningful, yet it was also fragile and dependent upon circumstances that could change without warning. The years of relative quiet that followed allowed both Vegeta and his family to develop bonds and understanding that would prove crucial when new challenges arose. His relationship with Bulma deepened beyond mere attraction or convenience, evolving into genuine partnership based on mutual respect and complementary strengths. The love he discovered for Trunks, while initially suppressed and denied, gradually became a source of motivation and purpose that transcended his previous focus on personal achievement. As this period of domestic tranquility drew to a close and new threats began to emerge on the horizon, Vegeta found himself fundamentally changed from the ruthless prince who had first arrived on Earth, seeking immortality and dominance. The transformation he had undergone was more profound than any mere increase in power level or mastery of new techniques. He had discovered aspects of himself that he had never known existed, developing capacities for love, sacrifice, and cooperation that would prove essential as the universe presented him with challenges that could not be overcome through individual effort alone. The foundation laid during these years of growth and self-discovery would serve as the bedrock upon which all future development would rest. The lessons learned about the value of relationships, the importance of protecting others, and the satisfaction that came from fighting for causes greater than personal glory would guide his choices in the trials to come. The prince who had once sought power as an end in itself had begun the transformation into a protector who understood that true strength came not from domination, but from the willingness to stand between those he loved and the forces that would harm them. The period following the Cell games marked a profound transformation in the way Prince Vegeta approached both his personal relationships and his understanding of power itself. The 7 years of relative peace that settled over Earth provided him with an unprecedented opportunity to explore aspects of existence that had been absent from his previous experience. For the first time since childhood, he found himself in an environment where survival was not constantly threatened, where the next battle was not always looming on the horizon, and where the simple pleasures of domestic life could be discovered and appreciated. The absence of Goku from this period proved to be both blessing and burden for Vegeta's continued development. On one hand, the removal of his primary rival and the constant measuring stick against which he judged his own progress allowed him to focus on internal growth rather than external competition, without the pressure of needing to surpass his fellow Saiyan. Vegeta could explore other definitions of strength and achievement that extended beyond pure combat prowess. Yet, this absence also created a void in his life that he struggled to fill through conventional training and personal accomplishment. The deepening of his relationship with Bulma during this period revealed layers of his personality that had remained hidden even from himself. The brilliant scientist's fearless approach to their interactions continued to challenge his assumptions about power dynamics and emotional vulnerability. Where his warrior training had taught him to view emotional attachment as weakness, Bulma demonstrated that genuine connection could serve as a source of strength and motivation that transcended any individual limitation. Her influence gradually eroded the walls he had constructed around his heart, allowing him to experience feelings that he had suppressed since childhood. Marriage represented a concept so foreign to Vegeta's previous experience that he approached it with the same analytical intensity he brought to mastering new fighting techniques. The commitment to another person, the sharing of resources and decision-making, the daily negotiations required for harmonious coexistence, all of these elements challenged his natural inclination toward independence and self-reliance. Yet he found unexpected satisfaction in the routines and responsibilities of married life, discovering that protecting and providing for a family created a sense of purpose that was different from, but equally meaningful as the pursuit of personal power. The role of father proved even more transformative than that of husband, forcing Vegeta to confront aspects of his own childhood that he had never fully processed. Watching Trunks grow and develop triggered memories of his own early years on planet Vegeta, before the trauma of separation and servitude had shaped his personality into its current form. The desire to provide his son with experiences that had been denied to him motivated choices and behaviors that surprised everyone who thought they understood the Saiyan Prince's character. Training during this period took on new dimensions as Vegeta sought to balance his continued pursuit of strength with his family responsibilities. The gravity chamber at Capsule Corporation became not just a place of physical conditioning, but a refuge where he could process the complex emotions associated with his evolving identity. The crushing artificial gravity that would have destroyed lesser beings served as a metaphor for the internal pressures he experienced as he attempted to reconcile his warrior nature with his growing capacity for love and connection. His approach to Trunks' training reflected his ongoing struggle to find the appropriate balance between preparing his son for the harsh realities of existence while protecting his innocence and allowing him to experience the childhood that had been stolen from Vegeta himself. The prince, who had been raised to value strength above all else, now found himself wanting to teach his son about honor, compassion, and the importance of protecting those who could not protect themselves. These lessons, while foreign to his own upbringing, felt increasingly natural as he observed the positive effects they had on Trunks' development. The announcement of the 25th World Martial Arts Tournament created a sense of anticipation that had been absent from Vegeta's life during the years of peace. The prospect of testing his skills against worthy opponents, of demonstrating the fruits of his continued training, and perhaps most importantly, of seeing Goku again after so many years, awakened competitive instincts that had never truly disappeared, despite his domestic contentment. Yet, his motivations for participating extended beyond simple desire for victory or recognition. The tournament represented an opportunity to show Trunks and Bulma what he had achieved during his years of dedicated training, to demonstrate that his commitment to family had not diminished his capabilities as a warrior. Moreover, it offered the chance to measure his progress against fighters who might challenge him in ways that solitary training could not provide. The balance between his roles as protector and competitor would be tested in ways that would determine how successfully he had integrated these seemingly contradictory aspects of his nature. Goku's return from the other world brought with it a flood of emotions that Vegeta had not expected to experience. The joy of seeing his rival again was tempered by the competitive fire that immediately rekindled upon their reunion. Yet, there was also a deeper satisfaction in knowing that the man who had played such a crucial role in his transformation was present to witness what he had become. The prince who had once sought Goku's destruction now found himself genuinely pleased by his return, a change that spoke to the profound evolution his character had undergone. The emergence of Majin Buu as a threat that transcended anything they had previously encountered forced Vegeta to confront the limitations of the peaceful life he had constructed. The ancient creature's power dwarfed that of Cell or any other opponent they had faced, while his seemingly infinite capacity for destruction posed risks to everything Vegeta had come to value. The realization that his family and his world could be destroyed by forces beyond his ability to control triggered responses that reached back to the trauma of planet Vegeta's destruction. Babidi's influence represented a different kind of threat than the overwhelming physical power that Vegeta had learned to combat through training and determination. The wizard's ability to manipulate the mind and exploit hidden desires for power struck at vulnerabilities that the prince had thought he had overcome. The temptation to embrace the dark magic that could boost his strength beyond current limitations created internal conflicts between his protective instincts and his competitive nature. The transformation into Majin Vegeta marked a deliberate choice rather than simple mind control, a decision that reflected his ongoing struggle with the competing aspects of his personality. While he allowed Babidi's magic to influence him, he retained enough independence to refuse the wizard's commands when they conflicted with his own objectives. This selective submission demonstrated both his continued capacity for strategic thinking and his desperate need to bridge the gap in power that had opened between himself and Goku. The revelation of Goku's Super Saiyan 3 transformation during their battle represented both the fulfillment of Vegeta's desire for a worthy opponent and a crushing reminder of his continued inadequacy. The new level of power that his rival had achieved seemed to place him in a category that transcended normal Saiyan limitations, suggesting that their eternal competition might have reached a point where Vegeta could never hope to achieve true equality. This realization struck at the very core of his identity and the beliefs that had sustained him through decades of training and sacrifice. The emergence of Majin Buu as an immediate threat forced Vegeta to set aside his personal rivalry in favor of more pressing concerns. The creature's casual destruction of human life and his apparent invincibility created a situation where pride and competition became secondary to the survival of everything he had come to value. The decision to confront Buu alone represented both a tactical calculation and a personal need to atone for his role in the monster's awakening. The battle with Majin Buu revealed the true extent of the creature's power, while demonstrating the limitations of even ascended Super Saiyan strength against an opponent who could regenerate from virtually any injury. Each of Vegeta's most powerful attacks produced minimal, lasting damage, while Buu's counterattacks consistently overwhelmed his defenses and left him increasingly desperate for a solution that seemed beyond reach. The realization that conventional combat was insufficient forced him to consider alternatives that he had never before contemplated. The decision to sacrifice himself through the final explosion technique represented the culmination of Vegeta's transformation from selfish warrior to protector of others. For the first time in his life, he chose to place the welfare of his family and his world above his own survival, embracing death as the price for potentially saving everything he had come to love. The emotional farewell he shared with Trunks before his sacrifice revealed depths of feeling that he had never before allowed himself to express, demonstrating how completely his priorities had shifted. The technique itself required him to convert his very life force into destructive energy, a process that was both physically agonizing and spiritually liberating. As his body crumbled to stone and his consciousness faded, Vegeta experienced a sense of peace that had been absent from his existence since childhood. The knowledge that he had finally chosen love over pride, sacrifice over self-preservation, provided a form of satisfaction that no victory in combat had ever achieved. The failure of his sacrifice to destroy Majin Buu served as a harsh reminder that good intentions and noble motivations were not always sufficient to achieve desired outcomes. Yet, the attempt itself had value that transcended its practical results, marking a fundamental shift in his character that would have consequences extending far beyond the immediate crisis. The prince, who had once valued only power and domination, had demonstrated his capacity for the ultimate sacrifice, proving that his transformation was both genuine and complete. His time in the afterlife provided opportunities for reflection and evaluation that had been absent from his previous existence. The judgment he faced forced him to confront the reality of his past actions, while acknowledging the growth he had achieved in recent years. The recognition by King Yama that his heart was no longer evil validated the changes he had undergone, while confirming that redemption was possible, even for those who had committed terrible acts. The return to life as a temporary privilege rather than a permanent restoration created urgency around his remaining opportunities to make a positive impact. The revelation that everyone he cared about had been killed or absorbed by an evolved form of Majin Buu transformed his perspective on what constituted ultimate failure. The loss of Bulma, Trunks, and the world they had built together represented a devastation that dwarfed any personal defeat he had previously experienced. The desperate fusion with Goku through the Potara earrings represented the ultimate abandonment of pride in favor of practical necessity. The man who had once refused all offers of cooperation now willingly merged his existence with his greatest rival, accepting the prospect of permanent fusion if it meant the possibility of saving his family. This decision demonstrated how completely his priorities had shifted from personal achievement to the protection of others. The temporary nature of their fusion and the subsequent separation provided both relief and renewed determination as they faced the final form of their enemy. The realization that conventional approaches had proven insufficient forced both Saiyans to dig deeper into reserves of power and determination that they had never before accessed. The coordinated effort required to defeat Kid Buu represented the culmination of their evolution from rivals to true partners in the defense of everything they valued. The final victory over the ancient menace came not through individual achievement, but through the combined efforts of friends and allies who contributed their energy to the spirit bomb that finally destroyed their enemy. Vegeta's role in convincing the people of Earth to donate their power demonstrated his growing understanding of leadership and responsibility, while his strategic thinking proved crucial to achieving the cooperative effort necessary for victory. The restoration of Earth and the revival of all who had died during the crisis provided Vegeta with a second chance at the life he had built during the years of peace. Yet, he returned to this existence, fundamentally changed by the experiences he had undergone, carrying with him a deeper appreciation for the relationships and responsibilities that had given his life meaning. The prince who had once sought only power now understood that true strength came from the willingness to sacrifice that power for the protection of others. The friendship that finally developed between himself and Goku represented the resolution of conflicts that had driven both Saiyans for years. While their competitive nature remained intact, it was now tempered by mutual respect and genuine affection that transformed their rivalry from destructive obsession into motivating force for continued growth. The acknowledgement that they were stronger together than apart marked a new phase in both their personal development and their effectiveness as defenders of their adopted world. As this chapter of his life drew to a close, Vegeta found himself in possession of something he had never expected to achieve: genuine contentment. The combination of family, friendship, and purpose had created a foundation for existence that transcended the simple accumulation of power or the achievement of dominance over others. Yet, even as he embraced this newfound peace, he remained aware that the universe contained threats that might require him to call upon every aspect of his development, both as a warrior and as a man who had learned to value something greater than himself. The defeat of Majin Buu marked the beginning of a new era in Vegeta's existence, one characterized by challenges that would test not only his martial prowess, but his capacity for growth in directions he had never previously imagined. The years that followed brought encounters with beings whose power transcended mortal understanding, forcing him to evolve beyond the traditional limitations of Saiyan development and embrace concepts of divinity that challenged every assumption he had developed about the nature of strength and achievement. The first harbinger of this new age came in the form of Beerus, the god of destruction, whose very presence on Earth created tremors of fear that reached back to Vegeta's earliest memories. The recognition of this purple-skinned deity triggered recollections of his childhood trauma, when he had witnessed his father's humiliation at the hands of this same cosmic entity. The paralysis that had gripped him then returned with full force, reminding him that despite all his growth and achievement, vast gulfs of power still separated him from the universe's true masters. The prospect of Beerus destroying Earth and everyone upon it transformed Vegeta's approach to the situation from one of warrior's pride to desperate protectiveness. The prince, who had once sought battle against any strong opponent, now found himself willing to swallow his dignity and play the role of gracious host, if it meant keeping his family safe from divine wrath. This calculated submission represented not cowardice, but strategic thinking of the highest order, demonstrating how completely his priorities had shifted from personal glory to the protection of those he loved. The comedy of errors that ensued as Vegeta attempted to manage Beerus's visit to Bulma's birthday party revealed aspects of his personality that few had ever witnessed. His frantic efforts to keep the god of destruction entertained and well-fed, his panic when other party guests failed to show appropriate deference, and his increasingly desperate attempts to prevent any actions that might trigger divine retribution, painted a picture of a man whose legendary pride had been completely subsumed by his protective instincts. Yet, when Beerus struck Bulma in retaliation for her defiant slap, something fundamental shifted within Vegeta's psyche. The sight of his wife being harmed by a being whose power he could never hope to match triggered an explosion of rage that transcended rational thought or tactical consideration. The transformation that followed his ascension to Super Saiyan 2, fueled by pure emotional fury, represented the first time that his love for his family had directly translated into increased combat capability. The brief battle that ensued demonstrated both the remarkable power that emotional investment could generate and the ultimate futility of challenging beings who operated on cosmic scales of ability. While Vegeta's rage-fueled assault actually managed to surprise Beerus and land several meaningful hits, the god of destruction's casual dismissal of his attacks served as a harsh reminder of the vast distances that still separated mortal achievement from divine power. The ease with which Beerus ended their confrontation left no doubt about who truly held dominance in their relationship. The revelation of the Super Saiyan god transformation and the ritual required to achieve it provided Vegeta with his first glimpse of power that might actually rival that of the gods themselves. The sight of Goku ascending to this legendary state and battling Beerus on relatively equal terms represented both inspiration and frustration for the prince. Once again, his eternal rival had achieved a level of power that seemed beyond Vegeta's reach, maintaining the competitive dynamic that had driven both Saiyans for so many years. The aftermath of Beerus's visit left Vegeta with a renewed sense of purpose and direction that had been absent since the defeat of Majin Buu. The knowledge that divine levels of power were potentially achievable through training and dedication rekindled his competitive fire, while providing him with objectives that extended far beyond anything he had previously contemplated. The prospect of eventually achieving Super Saiyan God status himself became a driving force that would shape his training regimen for years to come. The opportunity to train under Whis, Beerus's angelic attendant and martial arts instructor, represented the greatest educational opportunity of Vegeta's life. The prospect of learning from someone who had taught a god of destruction opened possibilities for growth that transcended any conventional understanding of Saiyan potential. Yet, gaining access to this training required him to demonstrate qualities that had nothing to do with combat prowess, forcing him to develop skills in areas such as culinary arts and customer service that challenged his preconceptions about what constituted valuable abilities. The months of training that followed on Beerus's planet provided Vegeta with insights into combat and energy manipulation that revolutionized his understanding of martial arts. Whis' teachings emphasized efficiency over raw power, technique over brute force, and mental discipline over emotional intensity. These lessons forced Vegeta to deconstruct fighting styles and approaches that he had spent decades perfecting, rebuilding them according to principles that were alien to traditional Saiyan methodology. The achievement of Super Saiyan Blue represented the culmination of this divine training, and Vegeta's successful integration of godly ki into his existing power base. The transformation felt fundamentally different from his previous Super Saiyan states, operating on principles that transcended simple energy amplification and entered realms of power that were qualitatively distinct from anything he had experienced before. The calm, controlled nature of the form reflected the mental discipline that Whis had instilled in him, replacing the emotional volatility that had characterized his earlier transformations. The return of Frieza as Golden Frieza provided Vegeta with an opportunity to demonstrate the fruits of his divine training while settling accounts that had remained unresolved for decades. The Emperor, who had destroyed his homeworld and murdered his people, had returned stronger than ever. Yet, Vegeta's new abilities allowed him to face this ancient enemy from a position of genuine superiority. The systematic dismantling of Golden Frieza's defenses represented not merely victory in combat, but the symbolic defeat of the trauma and helplessness that had shaped so much of his earlier development. The Universe 6 tournament introduced Vegeta to concepts of multiversal existence that expanded his understanding of reality itself. The discovery that alternate versions of Universe 7 existed, complete with their own versions of familiar planets and peoples, challenged his assumptions about uniqueness and destiny, while providing glimpses of what might have been under different circumstances. The presence of Saiyans from Universe 6, who had never experienced the trauma of planetary destruction, offered both hope and melancholy as he contemplated the paths his own people might have taken. His mentorship of Kaba during the tournament revealed aspects of his character that surprised even himself. The young Universe 6 Saiyan's earnest desire to learn and grow awakened protective and educational instincts that Vegeta had never expected to experience outside his relationship with Trunks. The process of teaching Kappa to achieve Super Saiyan transformation forced him to articulate principles and techniques that he had always taken for granted, deepening his own understanding while establishing a legacy that extended beyond his immediate family. The philosophical discussions about Saiyan pride and heritage that emerged during these interactions demonstrated how much Vegeta's understanding of his cultural identity had evolved. No longer did he view Saiyan nature as an excuse for brutality or conquest, but rather as a foundation for protection and justice that could be channeled toward positive ends. The pride he sought to instill in Kappa was not the arrogant superiority that had characterized his own youth, but a healthy self-respect based on dedication to worthy causes and the protection of others. The encounter with Hit, the legendary assassin of Universe 6, provided Vegeta with a humbling reminder that power could manifest in forms that transcended conventional energy-based combat. The time-skipping abilities that made Hit such a formidable opponent operated according to principles that were completely outside Vegeta's experience, forcing him to confront the reality that his divine training, while extensive, had not prepared him for every possible type of challenge. The ease with which Hit dominated their brief encounter served as motivation for continued growth and adaptation. The Goku Black crisis that followed represented perhaps the most personal threat Vegeta had ever faced, as the villain wore the face of his greatest rival while embodying everything that was antithetical to Goku's true nature. The sight of this dark reflection systematically destroying future Trunks' timeline while wearing Goku's appearance created a form of psychological horror that was difficult to process. The knowledge that this enemy possessed Saiyan abilities while lacking any of the moral constraints that governed their use made him particularly dangerous and personally offensive. The training sessions with future Trunks during this period allowed Vegeta to explore the father-son relationship that circumstances had denied him in the alternate timeline. The young man's determination to protect his world despite overwhelming odds reminded Vegeta of his own struggles against impossible circumstances, while his respectful yet independent attitude demonstrated the positive aspects of the upbringing he had received from future Bulma. These interactions provided glimpses of the man Vegeta might have become if his own childhood had unfolded differently. The battles against Goku Black and Zamasu tested every aspect of Vegeta's development, from his combat abilities to his capacity for teamwork and sacrifice. The fused form of these enemies represented power that transcended anything they had previously encountered, requiring coordination and mutual support that challenged his traditional preference for individual achievement. The father-son Gallic gun that he performed alongside future Trunks became a symbol of the bonds that could be forged through shared struggle and mutual protection. The ultimate resolution of the crisis through Zeno's erasure of the entire timeline served as a sobering reminder of the cosmic forces that operated beyond mortal comprehension or control. The knowledge that entire universes could be eliminated on the whim of beings whose power transcended even the gods forced Vegeta to contemplate the fragility of existence and the importance of cherishing the time and relationships that were available to him. The farewell to future Trunks carried weight that extended beyond simple parting, representing acknowledgement of roads not taken and possibilities that could never be recovered. The tournament of power that followed represented the ultimate test of everything Vegeta had learned about teamwork, strategy, and the protection of others. The prospect of universal erasure for the losing teams transformed what might have been a simple martial arts competition into a desperate struggle for the survival of everything he had come to value. The responsibility of fighting not just for personal achievement, but for the continued existence of his universe added psychological pressure that transcended any previous challenge. The birth of Bulla during the preparation period for the tournament introduced new complications and motivations that further demonstrated how completely Vegeta's priorities had shifted. His initial reluctance to leave Bulma's side during the final stages of her pregnancy showed the depth of his commitment to his family, while his obvious delight in his daughter's arrival revealed emotional capacities that would have been unthinkable during his earlier development. The protective instincts triggered by threats to his newborn child added another layer of motivation to his participation in the tournament. The tactical awareness and leadership abilities that Vegeta demonstrated throughout the Tournament of Power reflected his evolution from a purely individual fighter into someone capable of coordinating group efforts and strategic thinking. His ability to analyze opponents' weaknesses, coordinate combination attacks with teammates, and make sacrificial decisions for the greater good showed how completely he had internalized the lessons about cooperation and mutual support that his experiences on Earth had taught him. The development of his ultra ego transformation during the later conflicts with Granola and Gas represented the culmination of his training under Beerus and his acceptance of destruction as a necessary aspect of protection. Unlike Goku's ultra instinct, which emphasized evasion and efficiency, Ultra Ego embraced the philosophy of meeting challenges head-on and growing stronger through adversity. This transformation reflected Vegeta's fundamental nature while channeling it toward constructive rather than destructive purposes. The revelations about Bardock's role in Granola's survival and the true history of the Saiyans provided Vegeta with a more nuanced understanding of his people's legacy and the complexity of their relationship with the universe. The knowledge that not all Saiyans had been simply brutal conquerors, that some had possessed moral complexity and the capacity for growth, offered hope for redemption that extended beyond his personal transformation. These insights helped him understand that he was not an anomaly, but part of a larger pattern of Saiyan potential that had always existed but had rarely been given the opportunity to flourish. As this phase of his development drew to a close, Vegeta found himself in possession of power that approached divine levels, while retaining the emotional connections and moral foundations that made such power meaningful. The integration of his warrior nature with his capacity for love and protection had created a synthesis that was greater than the sum of its parts, enabling him to face cosmic-level threats while never losing sight of the personal relationships that gave his existence meaning. The ongoing rivalry with Goku had evolved into something that transcended simple competition, becoming a mutual support system that pushed both Saiyans toward heights neither could have achieved alone. Their friendship, built on shared struggles and complementary strengths, represented the successful integration of cooperation and individual excellence that had seemed impossible during their early encounters. The knowledge that they would continue to challenge and inspire each other provided assurance that their growth would never stagnate or reach artificial limits. The responsibilities that came with his increased power, from mentoring young warriors to defending entire universes, had given Vegeta a sense of purpose that extended far beyond personal achievement or family protection. He had become a guardian of cosmic order, someone whose actions could influence the fate of countless worlds and civilizations. This role, while daunting in its scope, felt natural and appropriate for someone who had traveled so far from his origins as a destroyer of worlds to become their protector. The transformation from Prince of a Dead World to Guardian of the Living represented one of the most profound character developments in the history of any universe. Every aspect of Vegeta's journey, from his traumatic childhood through his gradual awakening to the value of relationships and responsibility, had contributed to the creation of someone capable of wielding godlike power in service of justice and protection. The crown he now wore was not one of inherited privilege, but of earned respect and demonstrated commitment to causes greater than himself. The aftermath of the Tournament of Power and the subsequent conflicts with cosmic-level threats had fundamentally altered Vegeta's understanding of his role in the universe. No longer was he simply a warrior seeking personal advancement, or even a protector focused solely on Earth and his immediate family. The scope of his responsibilities had expanded to encompass threats that operated on galactic and universal scales, requiring him to develop new skills and perspectives that transcended traditional martial arts training and entered realms of cosmic guardianship that few mortals had ever been called upon to embrace. The recruitment into the Galactic Patrol represented a natural evolution of these expanding responsibilities. Though Vegeta approached this new role with characteristic skepticism and reluctance, the notion of serving as a law enforcement officer in any capacity ran counter to his instincts and personal history. Yet, the magnitude of the threats facing the universe made such cooperation not merely advisable, but essential. The criminal Moro represented a danger that no single world or organization could hope to contain, requiring coordinated efforts that transcended planetary boundaries and political divisions. The journey to apprehend the escaped prisoners who had allied themselves with Moro provided Vegeta with valuable insights into the criminal underworld that operated beyond the boundaries of civilized space. These encounters revealed the scope of lawlessness that flourished in the darker corners of the galaxy, where beings of considerable power used their abilities for exploitation and destruction rather than protection and growth. The systematic dismantling of these criminal operations served both practical and philosophical purposes, demonstrating that strength could be used to impose order rather than create chaos. The confrontation with Moro himself on New Namek forced Vegeta to face an opponent whose abilities operated according to principles that were fundamentally different from anything he had previously encountered. The ancient wizard's capacity to drain life energy from entire planets represented a form of power that transcended simple physical might, entering realms of magical manipulation that challenged conventional approaches to combat. The ease with which Moro neutralized both Vegeta's and Goku's most powerful attacks served as a humbling reminder that the universe contained threats that could not be overcome through traditional Saiyan methods. The defeat at Moro's hands and the subsequent rescue by the Namekians provided Vegeta with crucial time for reflection and strategic planning. The realization that his current abilities, however impressive by conventional standards, were insufficient to protect the universe from this particular threat, motivated him to seek training and techniques that lay outside his previous experience. The decision to travel to Yardrat represented a fundamental shift in his approach to power acquisition, moving away from pure physical conditioning toward the development of spiritual and mental capabilities. The planet Yardrat itself challenged many of Vegeta's preconceptions about strength and civilization. The inhabitants possessed abilities that seemed impossible according to his understanding of physics and energy manipulation, yet they wielded these powers with a casual ease that suggested mastery of principles he had never encountered. The humility and wisdom displayed by the Yardratians contrasted sharply with the arrogance and brutality that characterized most powerful beings in his experience, offering alternative models for how strength might be integrated into daily existence. The training in spirit control that followed represented perhaps the most difficult educational experience of Vegeta's life, requiring him to develop patience and introspection that ran counter to his natural temperament. The techniques themselves operated on principles that were alien to Saiyan methodology, emphasizing balance and harmony rather than overwhelming force. The process of learning to manipulate spiritual energy rather than simply physical ki forced him to confront aspects of his own nature that he had never fully understood or appreciated. The development of forced spirit fission as his signature technique reflected both his newfound spiritual awareness and his fundamental values regarding fair combat and honest achievement. The ability to separate absorbed or stolen power from artificial fusions represented the perfect expression of his philosophy that strength should be earned rather than taken, that true power came from personal development rather than exploitation of others. This technique embodied everything he had learned about the difference between genuine achievement and hollow shortcuts that provided temporary advantage at the cost of authentic growth. The mastery of instant transmission, while initially motivated by practical necessity, provided Vegeta with insights into the nature of space and dimensional travel that expanded his understanding of reality itself. The technique required a level of mental focus and spatial awareness that challenged his traditional reliance on direct approaches to problem solving. The successful execution of this ability, even if only once under emergency conditions, demonstrated his capacity to adapt and learn skills that were fundamentally opposed to his natural inclinations and preferred methods. The return to Earth and the subsequent battle with the enhanced Moro showcased both the effectiveness of Vegeta's new abilities and the satisfaction that came from defeating an opponent through techniques that reflected his personal values. The systematic reversal of Moro's power absorption, the restoration of energy to its rightful sources, and the liberation of the Namekians, who had been consumed by the wizard's hunger, represented victories that transcended simple combat success. These achievements validated his approach to power and confirmed that strength, guided by moral principles, could triumph over raw exploitation. The revelation that Moro had merged with Earth itself presented a challenge that tested every aspect of Vegeta's development as both warrior and protector. The threat to his homeworld and family created urgency that motivated him to push his abilities beyond their previous limits, while the scope of the danger required cooperation and coordination with allies whose own capabilities complemented his strength. The successful separation of Moro's consciousness from the planet demonstrated that his spiritual training had practical applications that extended far beyond personal development. The integration of his galactic patrol experiences with his existing responsibilities on Earth required careful balance between cosmic duties and family obligations. The knowledge that threats could emerge from anywhere in the universe at any time created ongoing tension between his desire to remain close to his loved ones and his recognition that proactive intervention might be necessary to prevent catastrophes that could ultimately threaten everything he sought to protect. This balance would require constant adjustment and refinement as new challenges emerged. The relationships formed during his galactic patrol service, particularly with Jaco and the Ardracians, provided Vegeta with professional networks and resources that extended his influence beyond Earth's boundaries. These connections represented more than simple tactical alliances, evolving into genuine partnerships based on mutual respect and shared commitment to justice. The trust placed in him by beings from completely different cultures and backgrounds validated his transformation from destroyer to protector, while establishing foundations for future cooperation. The philosophical implications of his role as a cosmic guardian forced Vegeta to grapple with questions of responsibility and intervention that had no easy answers. The universe contained countless worlds and civilizations, each facing their own challenges and threats that might benefit from his assistance. Yet, the limitations of time and space meant that he could not be everywhere at once, requiring him to develop criteria for determining where his intervention would be most effective and necessary. These decisions carried moral weight that extended far beyond personal preference or convenience. The continued development of his ultra ego transformation during this period reflected his growing understanding of destruction as a necessary component of protection and renewal. The form allowed him to channel the destructive impulses that remained part of his Saiyan nature toward constructive purposes, using the power of annihilation to eliminate threats that could not be reasoned with or reformed. This integration of seemingly opposing forces represented a level of self-understanding and personal synthesis that few beings ever achieved. The training sessions with Beerus and Whis that continued throughout this period provided ongoing refinement of his divine abilities while deepening his appreciation for the responsibilities that accompanied cosmic-level power. The god of destruction's casual attitude toward universal-scale consequences served as both warning and inspiration, demonstrating the importance of maintaining perspective and emotional stability when wielding forces that could reshape reality itself. These lessons proved invaluable as Vegeta continued to evolve toward his ultimate potential. The emergence of new threats that required increasingly sophisticated responses validated his decision to pursue spiritual and tactical development alongside traditional power enhancement. The universe's tendency to produce challenges that matched or exceeded the capabilities of its protectors meant that stagnation or complacency could have catastrophic consequences. The ongoing evolution of his abilities and understanding represented not luxury but necessity in a cosmos where the stakes continued to escalate. The satisfaction that came from successfully protecting not just Earth, but entire sectors of space from destruction provided Vegeta with a sense of purpose and accomplishment that transcended anything he had experienced during his earlier focus on personal achievement. The knowledge that his actions had preserved countless lives and civilizations created a legacy that extended far beyond his own existence or that of his immediate family. This broader perspective on the value and impact of his choices would continue to guide his development as he faced whatever challenges the universe might present. The integration of his various roles as husband, father, warrior, and cosmic guardian required constant adjustment and refinement, yet the synthesis of these seemingly disparate aspects of his identity had created something greater than the sum of its parts. The love that motivated his protection of family had expanded to encompass entire worlds, while the strategic thinking required for universal-scale threats enhanced his effectiveness in more personal conflicts. This holistic approach to existence represented the ultimate evolution of the fragmented prince who had first arrived on Earth, seeking only power and dominance. As this chapter of his development drew to a close, Vegeta found himself in possession of abilities and perspectives that few beings in the universe's history had ever achieved. Yet, rather than creating satisfaction or complacency, these accomplishments served to illuminate the vast expanses of growth and responsibility that still lay ahead. The universe was vast and filled with mysteries that challenged understanding, threats that tested resolve, and opportunities for service that demanded the best of everything he had become. The years that followed Vegeta's emergence as a cosmic guardian marked a period of unprecedented integration and fulfillment in his existence. The various aspects of his identity, which had once seemed irreconcilably opposed, had crystallized into a harmonious synthesis that allowed him to excel simultaneously as protector of the universe, devoted family man, and eternal rival to Goku. This balance, achieved through decades of struggle and growth, represented not merely personal achievement, but a template for how power and responsibility could be wielded in service of something greater than individual ambition. The evolution of his relationship with Bulma during this period reflected the deepening understanding and partnership that had grown between them over the years. Their marriage had transcended the initial attraction and mutual challenge that brought them together, developing into a profound connection based on shared values, complementary strengths, and unwavering commitment to their family's welfare. Bulma's continued scientific innovations provided crucial support for his cosmic duties, while her emotional intelligence helped him navigate the complex psychological terrain that accompanied his expanding responsibilities. The raising of Trunks and Bulla presented Vegeta with daily opportunities to demonstrate the values and principles he had developed through his transformation. Unlike his own childhood, which had been marked by trauma, separation, and the constant threat of violence, he was able to provide his children with stability, guidance, and unconditional love that allowed their natural talents to flourish. The pride he took in their accomplishments transcended simple parental satisfaction, representing validation of his capacity to nurture and protect rather than merely destroy. His approach to their training reflected the wisdom he had gained about the relationship between power and responsibility. Rather than pushing them toward maximum strength regardless of consequences, he emphasized the importance of self-control, moral judgment, and the protection of others as the proper applications of Saiyan abilities. These lessons, delivered through both instruction and example, ensured that the next generation would inherit not merely his power, but the wisdom necessary to use it constructively. The mentorship role that had begun with Kappa during the Universe 6 tournament expanded to encompass a broader range of young fighters who sought his guidance and instruction. Each student presented unique challenges and opportunities, forcing him to adapt his teaching methods to accommodate different personalities, learning styles, and cultural backgrounds. The satisfaction that came from watching these protégés develop their abilities and apply his lessons to their own challenges provided a form of fulfillment that complemented his other accomplishments. The philosophical discussions that emerged during these teaching sessions revealed the depth of understanding that Vegeta had developed about the nature of strength and its proper applications. His ability to articulate concepts that he had once understood only instinctively demonstrated not merely intellectual growth, but a fundamental shift in how he processed and shared knowledge. The transformation from student to teacher represented one of the most significant aspects of his evolution from selfish warrior to guardian of others. The ongoing rivalry with Goku had evolved into something that transcended competition while retaining the motivational force that drove both Saiyans toward continued improvement. Their sparring sessions became exercises in mutual development rather than simple contests of superiority, with each fighter pushing the other toward new heights of achievement and understanding. The friendship that had grown alongside their rivalry provided emotional support and intellectual stimulation that enriched both their lives. The integration of their different approaches to combat and philosophy created a synergy that made them more effective when working together than either could be individually. Goku's intuitive understanding of combat flow and adaptive techniques complemented Vegeta's tactical analysis and strategic planning, while their contrasting personalities provided different perspectives on problems that required creative solutions. This partnership had become a model for how individual excellence could be enhanced through cooperation rather than diminished by it. The cosmic threats that continued to emerge tested every aspect of Vegeta's development, while providing opportunities to demonstrate the effectiveness of his integrated approach to power and responsibility. Each challenge required different combinations of his abilities. From the spiritual techniques learned on Yardrat to the divine transformations achieved through training with Whis, the variety of threats ensured that his growth remained dynamic and multifaceted, rather than stagnating in any particular area. The emergence of Black Frieza as a threat that surpassed even their combined abilities served as a humbling reminder that the universe's capacity for producing powerful antagonists remained seemingly limitless. Yet, rather than discouraging him, this revelation reinforced his commitment to continued growth and adaptation. The knowledge that new challenges would always emerge provided motivation for ongoing development, while validating his decision to pursue strength through multiple avenues rather than relying on any single approach. The responsibilities that came with his role as one of Universe 7's primary defenders extended beyond simple combat effectiveness to encompass leadership, diplomacy, and strategic planning on scales that affected entire galaxies. His input was sought on matters ranging from interplanetary conflicts to cosmic policy decisions, requiring him to develop skills in areas that had been completely outside his original education. The transformation from destroyer of worlds to architect of cosmic stability represented perhaps the most profound aspect of his character development. The satisfaction that came from these broader responsibilities reflected his evolution from someone who sought power for personal validation to someone who understood strength as a tool for creating positive change. The knowledge that his decisions and actions could influence the fate of countless civilizations created a sense of purpose that transcended any individual achievement or recognition. This perspective had become central to his identity, driving choices that prioritized long-term stability over short-term advantage. The technological innovations that Bulma continued to develop provided crucial support for his expanding duties, while demonstrating the value of intellectual partnership in achieving objectives that neither could accomplish alone. Her scientific genius complemented his combat abilities in ways that created possibilities neither could achieve individually. The gravity chambers, training equipment, and communication systems she designed enabled him to maintain peak conditioning while staying connected to cosmic developments that might require his intervention. The domestic routines that structured his daily life provided essential balance and grounding that prevented the overwhelming nature of cosmic responsibilities from consuming his identity entirely. The simple pleasures of family meals, bedtime stories for his children, and quiet conversations with Bulma served as anchors that kept him connected to the personal motivations that gave his larger duties meaning. This balance between cosmic and domestic concerns had become essential to his psychological well-being and continued effectiveness. The ongoing development of his ultra-ego transformation reflected his deepening understanding of destruction as a creative force rather than merely an instrument of annihilation. The ability to channel destructive energy toward protective purposes represented the ultimate integration of his Saiyan nature with his evolved moral framework. This synthesis allowed him to access power levels that rivaled those of the gods, while maintaining the emotional connections and ethical constraints that prevented such power from corrupting his fundamental character. The strategic thinking that had always been one of his greatest strengths continued to evolve as he faced increasingly complex challenges that required coordination between multiple parties and consideration of long-term consequences. His ability to analyze multidimensional conflicts and develop solutions that addressed both immediate threats and underlying causes had become invaluable in maintaining cosmic stability. These skills, combined with his combat abilities, made him uniquely qualified to address problems that transcended simple military solutions. The respect that he had earned from beings across the universe, from fellow warriors to cosmic entities, reflected the consistency with which he had applied his principles and the effectiveness of his approach to wielding power responsibly. This recognition was not merely honorary, but practical, as his reputation often allowed him to resolve conflicts through negotiation and deterrence rather than violence. The transformation from feared destroyer to trusted guardian had opened diplomatic possibilities that enhanced his effectiveness beyond what force alone could achieve. The legacy that he was creating through his actions and choices extended far beyond his own existence to influence how future generations would understand the relationship between power and responsibility. The example he set through his dedication to family, his commitment to justice, and his willingness to sacrifice for others provided a template that could inspire countless others to pursue similar paths of growth and service. This influence would persist long after his physical presence was no longer available to directly impact events. The contentment that characterized this period of his life was not the satisfaction of having achieved final victory, but the deeper fulfillment that came from knowing that his existence had meaning beyond personal achievement. The various roles he fulfilled, from husband and father to cosmic guardian and mentor, created a richness of experience that provided satisfaction regardless of external circumstances or recognition. This inner peace had become the foundation upon which all his other accomplishments rested. The continuing challenges that emerged from the universe's seemingly infinite capacity for producing new threats served not as sources of stress, but as opportunities to apply everything he had learned and developed. Each crisis provided chances to demonstrate the effectiveness of his integrated approach while continuing to refine and improve his methods. The knowledge that he would never reach a point where growth was no longer possible or necessary had become a source of motivation rather than frustration. As this chapter of his existence continued to unfold, Vegeta found himself in the unique position of having achieved a level of integration and effectiveness that few beings in the universe's history had ever reached. Yet rather than creating complacency or satisfaction with current accomplishments, this achievement served to illuminate the vast possibilities that lay ahead. The universe remained vast and mysterious, filled with opportunities for continued growth, service, and the exploration of potential that seemed to have no ultimate limits. The prince who had once sought only power and dominance had become something far greater than royalty or divinity could encompass. He had become a guardian of possibility itself, someone whose existence expanded the potential for good In a universe that constantly tested the limits of what could be achieved through dedication, growth, and the willingness to place something greater than oneself at the center of all effort and ambition. From the ashes of a destroyed world rose a prince who would redefine the very meaning of strength and nobility. Vegeta's journey encompasses the full spectrum of transformation, from destroyer to protector, from tyrant to father, from isolation to profound connection. His evolution mirrors our own capacity for growth, demonstrating that no past deed defines our future potential. The Saiyan prince discovered that true power lies not in domination or destruction, but in the bonds we forge and the lives we choose to protect. His rivalry with Goku became the catalyst for unprecedented growth, pushing both warriors to heights neither could reach alone. Through love, sacrifice, and unwavering determination, Vegeta transcended his origins to become something far greater than royalty. He became a symbol of redemption made manifest. As we conclude this chronicle, we see not merely a warrior, but a man who proved that even the proudest heart can learn humility, that even the darkest soul can find light. The Prince of all Saiyans found his true kingdom not in conquest, but in the family and friends willing to call him home. His story stands as testament that transformation, no matter how profound, is always possible.